Good morning, everyone. It's 47 minutes after 9 on this Thursday. Hope you guys are doing well. Good morning. Blue, I think, was first today on YouTube. Hello to Angela, Wyatt. Hello, good morning. Good morning to Nikki as well, and ZK. Who else we got here today? Carrie's here. Tater Tot Gaming. All right, I'm sure the crowd will grow as word gets out what we're up here today. You guys have been aware for a while, right? And that is today we're going to have a chance to cover at least the snapshot of how autumn is starting to trend. And again, I'm going to take you out to the end of November coming up. I'm going to cover the short term first because there are some changes there, so we need to cover that. And then we'll get into the longer term. And then, excitingly enough, after this, it's all about coming into the winter outlook, right? I'll start working on that next week. How exciting. All right, so let's get right into it. Let's do first the countdown. As you guys know, hasn't really mattered as much, right, this year. 25 days and counting until we get to the autumnal equinox, which will be on a Monday this year at 2:19 in the afternoon. And one of the signs, of course, you got to deal with when you're dealing with autumn weather around here is the dry weather. And, of course, the dryness that's outside as far as the fuels with leaves starting to dry up. So we'll be looking at the burn bands and the latest look at the drought index, which updated to less than an hour ago. All right, in Louisville, it doesn't show there, but we did drop to 56 in Louisville this morning. Once again, it's our second time. Lexington, once again, dropped to a record level into the 40s. It's the third morning in a row they've had a record low temperature there in Fayette County. We got 48 into Cordon. Had several 45s again across Kentucky. Numbers up just a couple of notches as expected today compared to the past couple of mornings, but honestly, you really didn't notice much of a difference, right? Still very pleasant outside. Here's a live look at the city of Louisville, at least way in the distance on the right-hand side. This is from New Albany, looking downstream on the Ohio River there. What a pretty shot, right? Let's look at the burn bans because we do have, 5 counties now in the burn bans that have been declared. Henry, Spencer, Marion, or not, excuse me, not Marion, but Marion's probably next. Greene, Taylor, and Adair. You guys have burn bans that are out. The other counties that are shaded in red also have declared that, but are just outside of wave country. The drought map today updated, and not a shocker here, it was expanded. So a low in drought status now all the way into Louisville and southern areas of Indiana, where the moderate drought didn't really move. Basically in the same spot of parts of Marion, Taylor, and Adair counties. We're not going to get a ton of rain between now and sampling day again on Tuesday of next week, so this will likely worsen a bit more. But as I've mentioned, alluded to, this is the dry season, so you would think this map would have gone twofold into a whole other category rapidly, right? Well, if it were in the spring season or even midsummer, it probably would be more of a dramatic looking map. But when we're already factoring in that we're expecting drier than normal in many cases on rainfall, the changes to the drought outlook map are relatively subtle. You don't really notice a ton of difference there for that very reason. But still, having said that, this is the time period with these cool nights coming our way, and it's going to get even cooler here soon, as you're about to see. The fire pits will be going, fire pits. Everyone's getting ready for haunted houses here soon, having some friends over kind of thing. I get it, just to be really aware of how this is going to play out, especially as we have more leaves that eventually fall. Some due to drought stress, some just naturally change. My entire neighborhood is about 30% all red now with the maples, and I'm not alone. It's all up and down, really, in southern Jefferson County. A lot of the maples are turning early this year to red, and usually it's just the tops of them because that's where the sun rays impact the trees first at the top part, and it helps in inducing that change in color. Areas that are a little more shaded from the sun rays, direct sun rays, tend to change a little later. But as we know, most of you know, the peak fall color season here is really once we get late September and October, but the true peak tends to be about maybe a week or so before Halloween. And so that's a long way away. That's nearly 2 months away. So you may get some drought-stressed trees that will just lose their leaves altogether, not change, kind of that brown, yellowish leaf look to them when they fall. Not much color there, but as you get into certain types of species of different trees, they do actually change a little earlier than others. So anyway, that's the drought index. Just wanted to share that with you all. All right, we're 62 in Louisville now, very pleasant, 64 in Salem, 63 in Columbia. Hey, this is different. We got something on the radar. It's been a while. All right, so what's the deal with this? Well, this is part of the moisture that is going to be dropping in with our front that will do the mini reset for Saturday on temperature, but it will have very limited amounts. Now, moisture content is higher across Indiana than certainly it is into Kentucky, hence why we have the drought status. We are just not able to hold as much moisture in the air with our dry ground, and this front's run into a hostile environment because of that. Plus, we don't have a true south wind. The wind is calm actually now, so it's not getting much help. If anything, it's getting a little more help from the Great Lakes than it is from the Gulf, so that's why they have a little bit more of a showery look as it drops down. And this is going to be a little bit of a mind game here. These showers are going to drift more southeast into West Virginia. Our rain chance really for our southern Indiana counties, and I would even throw Kentucky into that, would actually happen here at the tail end of this rain band as it slides to the southeast. Whatever develops in this corridor of Illinois would be where you're going to get a shower chance in Indiana late today, more so overnight tonight, and then on Friday a little more south and west of there. But even that is only going to be a few sprinkles, just enough to mess up that pretty convertible that you've been working on shining up for your hot date coming up on Friday. So unfortunately, the raindrops will get in the way. Not enough to change the drought status. This is a very minimal amount of rainfall. Hey, look, for meteorologists, something to track for once. Here's one of our in-house models, and they all look similar. They just all vary a bit on dew point, which is not that unusual for high-res modeling. They tend to vary, and dew point matters in a big way on determining not only your temperature, but cloud cover and measurable rainfall. So the amount of moisture the model picks out, if it's off, then it's going to be off on everything else, right? So they're all similar, but they all have their little quirks to them. This one I think is fair in out how it tells the story, and I think that's important for you all to see the storyline of how it evolves, and then we'll get into the finer details once it actually indeed gets here. But in futurecast terms, for the rest of the day, most of that again heads to southeast. You can see how it just falls apart. Not much action to that. It's going to take until after sunset, really after midnight. Finally, it arrives here, and that's where we try to see if there's any moisture in Illinois that can try to pop a few raindrops into our area while you're asleep tonight. So if you wake up tomorrow and you notice some drops in the windshield, now we've had a lot of heavy dew in the past few mornings, so you may think it's dew out there, but you should notice a difference. There will not be as much dew because of clouds, but you should notice some drops in the window, the windshield, if you get any rain at all. Most of you will not. I think our rain chance is 10%, so yeah, the odds are pretty good you're not going to. That continues to slide to the south throughout the day on Friday, so it's mainly our southern counties. This is going to be a little bit more convective. See a little bit of Cape in St. Louis, a little bit more of a punch to them on the rate, but not enough to really, again, amount to a whole lot more than maybe a few hundredths of an inch. Sprinkles north, a few hundredths possible to the south, and that's all she wrote for this one. And it will allow for a temperature reset, so we do shave off a few degrees, and I do mean a few for our highs as we get into Saturday. But a nice, really nice start to the upcoming holiday weekend, right? We'll hold on to that until we get to the end toward Labor Day, and you see the clouds start to increase. I'll circle back around to that here in just a second. Before I go any further, is everyone good so far? Make sure there's no one fighting with each other here. Sometimes got to keep an eye on you all. What'd you say? Sorry, ZK, hit it twice. With the ground being dry and the air, what causes the intense, is that what causes the intense lightning we receive? Yes and no. It can influence your charges for sure, but you really got to have at least it's one of those things that's why fires break out west in the Rockies, is they have very low moisture content, but they have enough of a positive and negative charge to get lightning, and then wildfires break out. And majority of them actually start that way. Some are arson, but some do break out just from a random thunderstorm in Wyoming or Northern California, and it causes lightning strikes. So you're on the right track. So I wouldn't rule out lightning, but it wouldn't be with tonight's batch. It would be tomorrow afternoon. So if you're going to get any lightning, it would be with that potential, but that would be very minimal, less than 5 on the strikes there. Everyone seems good. Everyone seems all right. Good morning. Everyone's just saying hi to each other. You guys are so nice to one another. You guys are a great community. I love that. All right. All right, so let's go. Olivia, it's your birthday today? Well, happy birthday, Olivia. Where are you at, Olivia? I saw it somewhere. Doo-doo-doo. Olivia, love snow. Everyone, say happy birthday to Olivia. Happy birthday to you. All right, let's, I can't see much more than that because copyright. Okay, so let's get into the setup for Labor Day. This one's a little odd because we have that southern whatever mess is going to happen here in the southeast corner of the country that will try to evolve into an East Coast wave, whether or not it gets subtropical characteristics or not. Not a huge factor for us right now. I do think it will help in buckling the jet stream, though, in the higher latitudes, as you'll see in a second, to allow for our next shot of remarkably cool air to arrive in about a week's time. In the meantime, it's really a traffic jam of sorts. We have a mini little low pressure. You can't really see it here on Saturday. I'm just drawing it for now so you'll see. It drifts over Missouri. Then you've got the low pressure here down to the south. Whether it's offshore or not, we'll see. But it's allowing for a backwards flow. So there's a bit of a collision course right here, right over Kentucky and Tennessee. The two in Missouri and the ones coming in from the east kind of collide together. And that may be enough to allow for almost like outflows and thunderstorms. They will allow for themselves to work as a team to promote some showers, maybe a couple of thunderstorms. Still, amounts will be low. In this case, I'm thinking less than 1/4 of an inch on rainfall. Not enough to bust any kind of drought scenario, but you'll take it, I'm sure. But they will be eventually pushed and scooted out of the way by the next front, which will be the one to watch for next week. So here we go on Saturday. Let's get into, let's see, here's Labor Day. So far, so good. We'll get into the end of Labor Day into Tuesday. Here's where we start to run into the collision. So here's the low doing its thing there off the Charleston, Hilton Head coastline. You're getting orographic lift, we call this, where it's a backwards flow, so some of the moisture is coming off the mountains. Typically it dries as it sinks down, though. Not that the mountains are overly tall for central Kentucky there, but there is a little bit of a lift that happens. You get some shower activity, but it's areas that are in that moderate drought, so you guys need it. Meanwhile, you may have a little bit of help from the west, from Missouri, to enhance some of those showers there on Monday and Tuesday. Still can't go higher than 20, maybe. If we're feeling really generous, we'll go up to 30%, but right now I'm thinking 20%. Meanwhile, this low pressure is going to be tracking up the east coast, heading up to the north. Excuse me. As it does so, it's going to help in, once again, transporting warmer air off the warmer waters of the Gulf Stream into the higher latitudes. That helps. Now, this energy does not come straight from the Hudson Bay area northeast. There will be a wave coming in from northwest Canada, but it will help in allowing for its dig into the Great Lakes, into the Ohio Valley, because of the yin-yang effect of that energy heading ahead of it north up the coast. You get an opposite reaction over land, and that is what has been happening several times this summer season, right? Especially the latter half of the summer, and that's been allowing for us to get these cooler shots of air that have been such a nice little gift, and that trend will likely keep happening for next week. But the issue is that now that we've reset down to this level of cool, and then we get another wave that resets us down more, our step downs get a little more impressive. No, it's not going to snow. You're going to ask that. It's not going to snow. But they become a little more dramatic on the stepping down. If we start to see more gaps in this process, then you'll get your warm-ups. And that's why I'm not ready to declare. I debated this morning. I did. I thought about it on my way in. I thought, should I just do it? Just go ahead and say 90 is done. But there's something just itching in the back of my head. It could have been a tick. I don't know. But I just felt like, I can't see it yet. But boy, we're close. We are close. Still see signs of upper 80s, and I think that's just too close for a dry scenario, in Louisville especially, to say that. But it should help give you an idea, though, that we're getting close to making that call. But there's a reason also why I'm not saying it. You'll see that in the fall outlook coming up there. All right, this moves in. Now, this is interesting. A week from today, when this light rain moves in, I do think there's an issue here on the closed low idea. Will this be a little closer to us? Will it be up here in the Great Lakes, somewhere in between? Either way, I do think it will give us a light rain scenario that for a while looked like it would be limited to just one part of Thursday. Now I'm thinking it may be a good chunk of Thursday, a light rain potential out of this. Now the QPF again is going to be low. The amount of moisture is going to be low. But if you have grass seed that is planted or you're about to plant grass seed, this is a good day for that. This would be awesome because we're taking our numbers down on this, but there will be many of you on this particular setup a week from today that may not get out of the 60s. But it would be cloud and rain induced because the cloud cover looks too thick to really allow much in the way of the lower sun angle that we're already getting now to penetrate that. So I think Thursday could be a bonus cool day, but not overly sunny, if that makes sense. Now, you will get a cool day with sunshine. That will likely be the Friday right after it. But then we warm back up again. And back into the 80s we go for that following weekend. Will we keep this idea of repeating with another wave coming in and one going up the coast, another one dives in? That's a good question. That's your tease for what I'm about to say. Let me cover the 10-day first. Get some of your questions just on the short-term stuff. We're going to go with up to mid-80s. This could be an 86 or an 87 mixed in somewhere. I do think with it being that collision course of boundaries Monday into Tuesday, even parts of Wednesday, that I think there's going to be quite a few clouds. So that is going to limit on how high in the 80s we can really go here. But overnight lows will be the biggest thing you'll notice. They will increase back into the 60s. So we'll go with a modest rain chance Labor Day, but I really think most of you will be fine for your outdoor plans. It's going to be a little more Tuesday now. It looks to be more of an issue. And then the front moves in. There's that rain cool day on Thursday, 70. And then as skies clear that night, could be a lot of fog. That's the only issue. If we get fog, then that 52 may be a little harder to reach. A better chance to get back to chilly air, though, when the sky is clear for sure as we into Friday and Saturday. But hey, look at that. Not a bad looking setup, right? Bourbon and beyond, that's the 10th, right? So this outlook only gets you to the weekend before that Thursday, I believe. So we'll cover that sort of. I will say there's a warming trend that is commencing because all you got to do is space out how these are all arranged, and you can kind of tell if you're heading into a warming or a cooling period. You can just extrapolate out, and if this is the trend that we're looking at, then we should be into a warming scenario that week of Bourbon and beyond, the first half of the week. But notice all of these fronts and boundaries keep wanting to show up around Wednesdays and Thursdays, just as we're getting into the festival. So stay tuned. We'll see if another wave comes back down or not. Too early to know that. But at least I don't see another Helene or anything like that coming our way, which is good. All right, everyone good? Type 3 for good. Type 3 for good. Type 3, 3, 3 if you're ready for the fall outlook. And you want me to hush up and move on. What's this mean for severe weather, Kelly asked. With the lack of deep moisture with these are going to be very low top type of showers. There is some wind energy, yes, but you're really lacking a lot on the fuel side. The Gulf never fully opens up to allow us to have a full-on heavy rain scenario or thunderstorm scenario. They seem to be moving a little too fast right now, and at an odd angle from the north. There are northern branch features, so because of that, I am not overly worried on severe right now, which is good. All right. A mix of 3 and 3, 3, 3s. Everyone's good, I think. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get us into a quick break for a moment because there's one graphic that I already know that I messed up. And there's one I know you're going to complain, you're going to have a hard time seeing, so I'll work with you on that, all right? So give me about 30 seconds. We're going to knock this out, and I'll be back here coming up in 30 seconds. Don't go anywhere. Hang tight. All right, here we go. Time to get into the fall outlook. All right, that's going to be not as exciting as the winter outlook. I get it. The winter outlook gets all the fun and glory, as it should, as it absolutely should. Again, that comes out Halloween night. And it'll be a little different this year. I'll explain about that later. We got plenty of time. All right, so here's what we're going to do. There's a lot of data that I can just really throw at you guys, and it will be a bit overwhelming. And I don't think that autumn season deserves to be overwhelming because there rarely is a lot of dramatics with this. Let me caution you all. I'm going to indicate and show you how the fall months and meteorological fall, it will be September, October, November. Those are the 3 months I'm focusing on. And this is just a general idea of how things are trending, what I'm noticing, but there is a big asterisk here. And one of the bigger asterisks we have to add to this is the tropics, okay? So if the tropics fire back up, or we get a tropical storm, or even a fading hurricane that gets thrown into the mix anywhere along the line, some of this is going to get skewed for the better or for the worst, but it will certainly change things. There's just no way to know if that part of the forecast. Those are the X factor elements in an autumn outlook. So that's why you don't see a lot of people do autumn outlooks, because they're just so volatile on the tropics. But I like to do something like this. I like to do outlooks with you all because I think you guys are fun. You guys like to have fun with long-term data, right? All right, so here's what we're going to do. Let's start with the first one. This is going to be September. Now, for September, I'm going to keep the idea of the cool shots of air coming into play. I have to do a one snapshot, and otherwise I'm not going to type out every single day in September and do a map. I know you want me to, but you know, I got things to do today. I can't do all. But overall theme, I think the cool shots of air will be the theme that you'll hear about the most, especially for the first part here of September. Warmer weather should stay where it is, back out to the west, where the drought continues to hold on pretty good. And I'm going to keep it fairly wet along the Gulf states. I still think there's going to be a lot of recurving of these systems, whether it's energy that comes in from the west or even dives down from the north, but a lot of activity from either the Gulf or even from the Caribbean that will curve out, that will likely keep the moisture train a little more prevalent for the deep south of the beaches. And if we end up with a little more dramatics with some of these eastern lows, then this may have a little bit more staying power at times. But not a bad setup. There will be warm spells mixed in, and again, a 90 cannot be ruled out. So make sure to look at this carefully on that. All right, that's September's outlook, pretty self-explanatory. October, and like, oh, what are you doing with October? Well, here's the thing about October. October, to me, typically it's a quiet month for us. I think it's going to be a little wilder. And here's why. My worry on this is not only the tropics get a little more active again, some will be heading, the signal anyway indicates that there will be potential to get more of them go northwest, and some they'll still do the curve idea, but I'm not ruling out one or two that could head right into the Ohio Valley. The cool shots of air, I think, will continue for the northeast. I think that's going to be hard to escape, especially now that they are actually developing a bit of snow here, and they will develop some snow into central Canada. That may help in inducing more of these cooler shots, and I think we're going to see more of them diving into the northern part of the United States as well. Not anything unusual. If anything, you would expect it to get a little bit more in the Rockies, because typically Denver even gets some snowflakes, or at least mountain snow nearby for the ski resorts in October. So we'll see if that plays out this year, but I still think we're going to get some warm air. But with it being a lower sun angle at this point, this would not be 90s, this would be upper 70s, up to about 80. Not bad, right? There will be some pretty days mixed in here. Still think some cool shots of air, yes. Will we get a frost? Possibly. Our typical frost does happen in October. If we stay dry, the odds of that are pretty high this year. Last year, as you're about to see, we did drop to where we got snow. It was a mix of, Ryan Hoke and I were looking at this, a mix of softail or grapple with temperatures in the 50s. We dropped in the 30s at night, but it technically went down as a trace of snow. That was mid-October last year. So you can still have those one-off moments, but we did have some warm days mixed into this as well. So is this going to be a repeat of the October Halloween snow? Everyone asks me that every year. I don't know, but I don't see a strong signal to make me feel that way, right? So There you go. That's October. November, I do think will be a little more interesting this year. I think we're going to see the colder troughs themselves expand into larger troughs instead of a little more points into the East Coast. I think we'll have a period where they'll build a little more west, a little more central United States focused. We will like to start to shut down a lot of the tropical activity. So because of that, I think that may allow for cities to dive a little further south. So I allowed for a little broader, colder shots of air. We saw this last year that took place. Again, I'll go through some of the stats, but we ended up with snow last year at the very end of, you may remember, not far from Thanksgiving, that we ended up with this diving in and led to the cold and snowy setup for early December. So overall, if I had to compare them all out, our odds of being warmer than normal appear to be in October. I think September is going to be a challenge to get to that limit. I think you can in October, and I doubt we will for November. Here are the notes that I took. You're like, what is this? I was just taking notes, just kind of going through stats, tracking, obviously, El Nino is a factor, and La Nina, and just looking at September only, which I highlighted. Really, the fall season is highlighted in that whole block. If it's a gray box, it's a neutral winter, or neutral fall, excuse me, on the ENSO cycle for the oceans. If it's red, it's El Nino, blue, La Nina. We've had a lot of La Ninas, you can see. This is all since 2013. But really what stood out to me, and I apologize you can't see my typing there, but the El Nino years that are in red, boy, they were fierce. We had a lot of mid to upper 90s all the way through late September. And then, of course, in 2019, it was a neutral year that year in 2019, but we ended up close to 100 early in October even. So El Nino seemed to have a very prolonged summer impact. That's the signal I noticed, because your moisture levels are going to be high. You had a very humid setup, very much a warm overnight period, hot afternoons. It was really tough to flip the fall. La Nina still had some 90s involved. Almost every single year we had 90s of some sort involved. Even last year we made it to 94 all the way through the 21st of September. So 90s were still involved, but you had much more of a dramatic up and down. Almost like we're going through now, where these ups and downs have been a little more dramatic, and they will be in the future, as you just saw. I think that's going to be a repeating pattern for us, as we're likely to get back to another blue box when we fill that in at the very bottom there for 2025. We're heading into La Nina. So that's a signal that it will nearly repeat last year. And last year was, again, interesting. We made it to 94 all the way into the 21st of September, and then bam, we were done. No more 90s after that. Then we ended up with that grapple in mid-October. We ended up with the less than an inch of snow, but it was measurable snow at the last week there of November, which was awesome for the holiday season lovers. And December, the first 2 weeks of December, it snowed almost every day, but a dusting almost every day. It was very, very light, but it was cold. And we got down into the teens. So that led to the outlook that came out last year of like, oh, that means that the winter is going to be bad. And we were like, okay, this is not a good sign here, right? And then all of a sudden, just like clockwork, you got to a couple of days before Christmas, and we warmed up into the 60s. It ended up being a warm holiday period for us. Warm and stormy, in fact. We had thunderstorms that got involved. So there's definitely a signal that showed up with La Nina versus El Nino, depending on how strong each of those were. And that's something I found in the data. But again, that's just one tool that we look at. There's others that have to come into play, whether it's the tropics or blocking patterns that develop along the eastern seaboard, which has been a big factor as well at times in our weather. But you can't predict those numbers more than 2 weeks out, so I can't really include it in this outlook. But that will be something we'll be looking at. So if we hold on to this La Nina idea, then the fall season will feature a lot of dramatics on ups and downs, but moisture content will likely stay low. So here's your summary of the whole thing. To put this in English for all of you, since I'm rambling, I think it will be being a drier than normal autumn. Lots of ups and downs. As I said, 90's not done. I don't think it's done yet. Let's give it a couple more weeks to see if we get some gaps in those dips. And if we do, then this may be a little more likely. And I think the first flakes will fall in October again. I just don't know what part of October, but I can see it happening as we start to really evolve in the jet stream. We start to take on what the pattern will start to mimic for winter. And I think that'll be the first sign. There's not a whole lot of difference, though, when I looked at October and the pattern that is showing up and what we're about to enter. They're almost identical, which is a little eerie. So we may end up with a repeat. I still think at least measurable snow. That's not 10 inches of snow, that's 0.10, tenth of an inch of snow or more. So measurable snow, I think, again in November. Where do we go from here for December and January, February? We're not there yet. That, unfortunately, you will have to wait until the winter outlook. Cameron, you're trying hard, but I can't. Only because I'm just speculating. I really want to get you guys some hardcore data. And honestly, for long-term forecasters, October is one of the key months to analyze because, again, as I've alluded to, the weather pattern in October tends to repeat for the winter. So if we can start to identify some of the bigger signals that happen all the way up to Halloween, and that's why sometimes on Halloween I'm putting together the winter forecast all at the very last second because I needed that last day worth of data to add into the mix, right? So October is a very crucial month for a winter outlook on mimicking storm patterns if you're into doing signal analysis of forecasting, which I love to do. So we got to wait. But I think for the fall, I don't see a severe weather problem being an issue right now unless things change on the flow coming in from the Gulf, and I just don't see it happening. I think the pattern is fairly locked in on a lot of recurving systems from the Gulf and the eastern coast to where it's going to be hard to get a tropical system to go due north. Perhaps in October that could happen, but in September I don't see it happening. Any questions? Kelly, want to know about Harry's gender. Harry is a girl. Harriet was the gender reveal. Took 5 years. But now at least I know how to, it helps me out medically on how to raise her, especially they tend to sometimes run into a lot of issues with the production of eggs. It can cause a health issue for them, so I have to know. But I had to wait 5 years to get that confirmed. So that's why it was so exciting for that, to know. Prelude, highest temperature this summer. We did it twice, 97, June 24th and June 25th, 97. Is there no chance getting the Ring of Fire in from the fall? Ring of Fire not necessarily will work in the same way. You can get some MCSs, you're right. Jeremy, if it's placed just right, you can get some MCS action. But the problem is if you start running into a dry scenario, a lot of those MCSs will start to dry up. You can still get some gusty winds, but to get the rainfall side of them, the violent thunderstorm side, it becomes much more of a challenge. How the drought behaves here over the next 30 days is going to be key on that. But you're on the right idea. It's still possible. It wouldn't surprise me because I think where the high pressures have been located to our west will continue. Are we done with over 100? I don't see a path right now to get to that level, Cameron, so that's good news. You probably have noticed even in the evenings when you walked outside how the sunsets just look a little odd. And it's just because the sky is very clear. There's not a lot of moisture in the air, so the sun is so bright and vivid. The shadows are very sharp and contrasting, and the sun angle is getting lower. And so it creates an odd glow that you haven't noticed since spring, really. And you're like, wait a minute, why does the house look like that now? Why is that room in the house lighting up in the late afternoon and normally it didn't all summer? And it's the sun angle is getting lower, and it's getting that odd look to it all. But that's one of the reasons that you're ending up with a change in the sun angle there. And I think that's why it's harder to get those really intense heat domes. My wedding is on the 6th, Christian says, 6th of September. If that holds, yes. You will, not the wedding. I'm sure the wedding's going to be fine. Good luck to you. But weather, yeah, as long as the pattern, again, keep an eye on the ups and downs. Once you are able to start tracking those, it does get easy because everything's very slow evolving, so it gets easy to kind of time out where things will fit. All right, I'm going to stop rambling. This is a long block today, but I knew it would be, but I told you I would take care of this. and get this out of the way, and that way we can I can move on now to the winter forecast, start putting it together here soon. Just stay close to the changes. We'll go through this together, and I'll let you know if we're going off track, if thought process is totally wrong and there's some other X factor I didn't see, which it's meteorology, hey, chaos theory, that's always fun. And if I start to identify one, I'll let you know. But right now, this is, I think, a fair look of how things will evolve. All right, guys. Angela, I'll leave with your question, which I know was one that I debated on putting on here, but I'll go and answer it as the first frost. That one is tough, only because the amount of dry air you've got, you can get to some really cool nights. Typically, again, it's October. This year may end up being a very similar setup for October. But you may start to notice, again, some of the trees are already starting to change color outside there. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day. I will see you guys coming up on midday at 11 a.m.